Greetings at this unearthly hour. Well, it's not unearthly, it's about 7:30 in the morning. Busy day today. I've got the two scheduled shows of Battle of the Debuts and album artwork, but today also I am recording the number 190 songs with Richard McCook. So I thought I'd start a bit earlier today, hence we're still in the dark. Rocky's fast asleep and I've not been up very long, so early start today. First time I've done one in this sort of light. It's even too dark to open up the blinds. So today's Battle of the Debuts, we're going to go to the 80s today. We're going to go to two bands that had two people in them, both released an album with the how long, let's have just a quick look, because it's both in the same year too, and the bands we're talking about are Yazoo and Blancmange. So as usual we will take the first band that released first, and in this case it is Yazoo. They are known as Yaz in America for some peculiar reason. They were an English synth pop duo from Basildon in Essex, and consisted of former Depeche Mode member Vince Clarke and Alison Moyet on the vocals. They were formed in late 1981 after Clarke responded to an advertisement by Alison Moyet placed in a British music magazine, although the pair had known each other since their school days. Their career was very short. They only released the two albums, but they did have a lot of success. So their debut album, Upstairs at Eric's, was released on the 20th of August 1982 by Mute Records and was produced by the band and E.C. Radcliffe with some assistance from Mute label boss Daniel Miller. So on here is Alison Moyet pianos and vocal, Vince Clarke's instrumental, spoken words on I Before. Additional personnel on here is Daniel Miller, who does noises on Don't Go and To Pieces. So the first track on here is the classic song from the 80s, Don't Go. Still remains one of the best songs on the album. Very, very strong lyrics from Alison Moyet on this. Really good track. Second track, this is called Two Pieces. This song hasn't really aged well. The drum machine is very tinny and it's minimal keyboards, and if it wasn't for Alison Moyet's vocals it'd be pretty dull. Third track is called Bad Connection. This is a quirky little tune, but the drum machine is so tinny again and plinky. It's not got a good sound, I don't think. Then we get a track called I Before E Except After C. This is absolutely horrendous. Oh, I couldn't cope with this song at all. Should have been scrubbed off the album. It's totally annoying. Midnight is the next track. Great vocal from Alison here. But the content of the keyboards and that just doesn't deliver that punch. In My Room is a very disjointed track. It's not very cohesive. Then we get Only You, the best song on the album. Probably the best song that Yazoo ever did. I love this. It's a great vocal from Alison Moyet, and it was covered by the Flying Pickets as an a cappella sort of barbershop sort of thing as well. So that's how good the song is. Goodbye 70s. It's okay. Very 80s sort of poppy song. Tuesday, this is one of the better tracks on here. It's got a little bit more depth, great vocal as usual. Winter Kills, the second best track on here. It's a really good vocal from Alice and Moye on that, very good. Bring Your Love Down, it's okay, it's a typical 80s track. It's got some depth on this and a few more layers. Now, I really don't understand what the hype was about this album. Everyone says it's one of the best albums of the 80s. I just think, apart from the two singles, I think all the other tracks just lack depth. They're very basic. There's nothing to hold the tracks together. The drum machine is too tinny, and I think some of Vince Clarke's early work, it's all the same. I'm not very keen on this album, and I just can't understand how people raved about it. I mean, I've given it a good listen, and it's okay, but the rest of it's pretty mediocre. But anyway, what do I know about 80s music? Let's see what the reviewers thought. Well, Melody Maker hailed Upstairs as an album of Rick and dark passion, forever burying the hoary old moan of that electronic synthesizers. And they said it'll never be good because they don't have a button on the front that says emotion. There you go. Hannah Lynn of NME was more critical, feeling that Upstairs at Eric as an LP was a trial and some error, and it shows signs of collaboration that's still in its promising infancy. The writing is divided almost equally between the two. Lifton and Often, though, the LP speaks of two desperate parts rather than one new Yazoo facing the future. Okay, so AllMusic gave it 4 stars. The Encyclopedia of Popular Music gave it 4. The Philadelphia Inquirer gave it this 1. Rolling Stone 3. Smash Hits 8.5, and the Village Voice B+. It got to number 2 in the album charts in the UK. Independent, it got number 1. Billboard, it got 92. The certifications went platinum in the UK, United States platinum. I don't know. So let's have a look at the nuts and bolts here. The song quality on this, there's 2 really good songs, and the rest are just mediocre, I'm afraid. I really don't know what the hype all about this album was. So I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. Production, it needs more depth. I think if this album had a little bit more depth and not the same sort of repetitive clinkety plonk drum machine, I think it would have been better. So unfortunately I'm going to just give it a 3 out of 5. Reception, it went down well, and you know, respect, but not for me, but I will give it a 5 out of 5 because it did sell well in the UK, and it did get platinum in America and 90 and the United States, even though it only got to 92 on the Billboard, but it did get to top 40 on the R&B and hip hop charts. Cover design, I think it's one of the most iconic covers from the 80s, and I do like the cover, so I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 5. So giving a total for Upstairs at Eric's from Yazoo, a total of 15 out of 20. So let's bring on the next contender, and the band in question is Blancmange. They were a duo formed in Harrow in 1975 and composed of Neil Arthur on vocals and Stephen Luscombe on the keyboards. They very dominant in the early 80s. They parted and reformed, and now it's just Loscombe left, and then Arthur continues as to Blancmange under the Blancmange name, which I can't understand why. So their debut album, Happy Families, released on the 24th of September 1982. So a month later than Yazoo's. Produced by Mike Howlett, and on here we have got Neil Arthur on vocals, guitars and electronics, Stephen Loscombe on synthesizers and keyboards. We've got some additional musicians on here. David Rhodes plays on some tracks. We've got drums by James Lane, Steve Lange on backing vocals, Madeline Bell does backing vocals, Joe Yates plays on here, Deepak plays the sitar, and Dinesh plays the tabla. So first track is called I Can't Explain. Although I find this drum machine a little bit bizarre, it killed everything else, but it's got a lot of depth within that. I think this is a little bit more post-punk. It's not that brilliant. Feel Me. This is quite a catchy tune. Great vocal from Neil Arthur. He's a really good singer, I think, for this sort of music. It's got that real deep voice which really adds to it. I'd say this is more of a sort of electronic version, more electronic synthy version of Talking Heads. It's not a bad track actually. I've Seen the World. It's got some really interesting layers of keyboards on this. For the time it was very, very good, I think. Wasted. Again, we've got lots of nice little layers of keyboards. As well, this has got a little bit more depth, and some of the programming on the drumming is pretty clever. So it's an okay track. Okay, then we get probably one of the best tunes of 1981 on here. Living on a Ceiling, no more room down there. He's up the wall, he's up the bloody tree. I'm not keen on sitar, but on this it works, along with the tabla drums. It's a great track. I love this track, always have from the moment I first heard it. Then we get Waves. It's okay. It was a bit longer on the original version, 25 seconds. I don't know, understand why. There you go. Kind is like Living on the Ceiling, very quirky and catchy, very poppy, got a good beat to it. Sad Day, this is very interesting. It's got a nice sort of cushion of keyboards on this. Very good track, very good vocal. Cruel, not too bad. There's a lot spoken on this from Neil. Pretty good, I don't mind this. God's Kitchen, it's okay. I find the drum machine a little bit tinny on this one. What do I think of this album? I think this is a very experimental album. They tried to push the boundaries of electronic music on this. I always thought this is like a very electronic version of, took things that XTC and Joy Division and Talking Heads were doing. There's a lot of influence in this album by these three bands. I think this is one of the most underrated albums of the 80s. It's not an album I'd go out and buy, but I do love the single Living on a Ceiling. I think it's one of the best pop songs of the 80s. So that's what I think of it. What do the old critics think? Critical reception for Happy Families was mixed. Some reviewers feeling the album trod on sometimes unsuccessful path between experimental aspirations and commercial sensibilities. That's what I said. You know, this is a very experimental album. Melody Maker stated that touting the chalk and cheese of an odd couple image, mean Arthur and Loscombe's misfit of marriage of experimentation and unprocessed pop, was always in grave danger of belittling itself. There's little parodies of Sparks in here, parody of Joy Division, a little bit of Depeche Mode, they said. It was a brave album, and NME said Happy Families is a calmly assured collection of work, maybe not stamped with greatness, but there's a lot of not a number in the whole 10 that without appeal, intelligence and warmth. So what did they all think? Well, All Music gave it 4 stars, Melody Maker gave it an average, NME gave it favourable, and Smash It 7 out of 10. How did it do in the charts? Well, Australia, it got to number 17 in the album charts, Canada 98, New Zealand 13, and here in the UK number 30. So let's have a look at the nuts and bolts of this one. Song quality. I think there was some potential here, and as they weren't frightened to take risks. So I'm going to give song quality 4 out of 5. Production, very good production for 1982. A lot of thought went into this, and it sounds really good, and you listen to it today, it doesn't age at all. It's just very, very good. Reception didn't go down a storm as much, but I think over the years people have had some affection for this, so I'm going to give this 3 out of 5. Cover design, I think this is a really cool cover. It's one of my favourites again from the decade, so I'm going to give this 5 out of 5 because it's a really good cover. So Happy Families by Blancmange scores a total of 16 out of 20, so it pips Upstairs at Eric's by 1 point. Very close today, but I am going to stick my head out on this one, and I'm going to go with Happy Families. And the reason is, I think there's more depth in this than Yazoo's. It's a little bit thin, and I mean, in my opinion, I think Vince Clarke is a bit of a one-trick pony. He only knows certain things, and I think when they split up after 2 albums, when Alison Moyer went on to have a very successful career. I know I thought the Blancmange songs comparing the 2 debut albums, I always thought that Blancmange had the more quirky numbers, but and I think it was one of the strong albums of '82, Happy Families. But what do you think? Do you think I'm right to say that Happy Families is better than Upstairs at Eric's? What was all the fuss about Upstairs at Eric's? Because it's a very thin, repetitive album in places. So you can decide this now. It's up to you. You've got a good track record against me. So am I gonna lose again today? Who knows? Okay, that's 1 of 3 done. Next up, I'm going to have a break and have a cup of coffee and get some caffeine in me, ready to do the album artwork, which is this week Prog Giants, King Crimson. And don't forget, we have also got live stream tonight, and I'm doing the 90s number ones with Richard McCook later. So bye for now.